Welcome to Military Officers Association of America's continuing series of webinars to assist you and your family with career and life decisions. November is National Caregivers Month. Over 40 million Americans currently serve as a caregiver for a parent, grandparent, spouse, or friend. Caregiving is a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week job, and they are always on call. Today's webinar topic on military caregivers is an opportunity for us to recognize their service and sacrifice. The event will be recorded, and MOAA will send all participants a link to access the archived version early next week. As a reminder, you can submit your questions via the chat function, and we will answer as many as possible during the question and answer portion of the program. To assist MOAA with continuous improvement efforts, please take a couple of minutes to complete the short survey at the end of the webinar presentation. As many of you know, MOAA's primary mission is advocacy. With members representing all 7 of the uniformed services, MOAA stands strong to represent the interests of the entire military community. But we need your help and encourage you to join MOAA in this effort as we fight for military pay, compensation, and benefits for those currently serving, separated, retired, and their families. MOAA is also working for you, and we believe that protecting the health, financial security, and quality of life of those currently serving and veterans of all ranks, their families, and survivors is the foundation of a strong national defense. We have established 2 charitable subsidiaries to help military and veteran families enjoy a quality of life they've earned through their years of service. Both the MOAA Scholarship Fund, which has provided over $140 million in educational assistance to more than 14,000 military and veteran family children, and the MOAA Foundation, which supports the military and veteran families in 4 areas of urgent need, depend on donations from our members and people like you. Please consider donating today. It's just one more way each of us can continue to emulate our MOAA motto of never stop serving. Thank you for your consideration. MOAA's career transition programs rival anything available in the private sector, where we deliver trusted and focused decision support to assist service members and their families with life transitions. Here is just a few of our upcoming events, all of which are open to the broader military and veteran community. We would be delighted to have you join us, and you can find more information on these programs at the website link. Now let me welcome our guest presenters. With us today are subject matter experts from the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. Rashi Romanoff, Vice President of Programs and Partnerships, and Molly Ramsey, Program Coordinator, and their team are with us today. They are all uniquely qualified to help you better understand the programs and resources available to caregivers. With that short introduction, let me turn the presentation over to our special guest from the Elizabeth Dole Foundation.
Good afternoon. This is Rashi Romanoff. Are you all seeing the slides on the presentation? I'm assuming that's a yes. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for having us today. We're really excited to talk to all of you a little bit more about the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and some of the programming we have in place to support military and veteran caregivers and their families. Just a little bit of the history of the foundation. Senator Dole launched the Elizabeth Dole Foundation in 2012 after she personally spent some time at Walter Reed and had an opportunity to meet with other families and other spouses and other caregivers that were supporting veterans and active duty service members. And today, the foundation is really the preeminent organization focused on empowering, supporting, and honoring our nation's military and veteran caregivers. Pretty soon after we launched the foundation, one of the first things we really wanted to focus on was making sure that we were investing and funding research to really help us better understand both the footprint and the needs of military and veteran caregivers across the country. Within the foundation, we refer to a lot of these initiatives as our Hidden Heroes initiatives. And, the fact that we refer to it as such is really telling that before 2014, there really wasn't that much known about how many caregivers there were, where they were living, what their needs looked like, how old they were, et cetera. So that was one of the first things that we really focused on as a foundation. So in 2014, we commissioned a study with RAND to really give us this kind of information. And so what we found was that nationwide, there are about 40 million family caregivers. But of that 40 million, we know that there are at least 5.5 million. There are at least 5.5 million that are serving specifically as military and veteran caregivers. And this was a really interesting study for us. And I think, it's 2014, recognizing that 5 years has passed. We also acknowledge that this number has likely grown. Another big piece about what we know about this number now versus then is we also know that, children are very often serving in caregiving roles. So some of the work that we'll be doing in the future is really going to be about, further uncovering where these hidden heroes are and what their needs are, recognizing that this 5.5 might not be the end all and be all of our work. What's worth noting as a part of the RAND work was that as beyond, recognizing this 5.5 million, but really finding that the 5.5 million military and veteran caregivers are providing more than $14 billion each year in uncompensated care. So this is really, this study really drove a lot of the programs that the foundation has done and the ways that we seek to help our veteran community. So the next slide just talks a little bit about the mission and the vision of the organization. Everything that we're doing is really about empowering, appreciating, and recognizing military and veteran caregivers and their service to this nation. So a lot of the programs that we do, really try to align to that mission. We're going to walk you through just a few select programs that we thought might be of interest. This is by no means sort of fully encapsulating everything that we do, but we wanted to just highlight a few items that we thought might be of interest and are happy to follow up with you on specific questions as they may come up. So the first program to talk about is our Dole Caregiver Fellow program. Now, this is really the heart and soul of our foundation. It's the core of all of our programs. It's really the beginnings of where the foundation got its start. Each year, we select fellows from across the country to serve a 2-year term as fellows with the foundation. We seek to have fellows representing, one from every state. And so taken together, it's a really geographically diverse group of individuals representing, different regional issues, urban and rural issues that are affecting military and veteran caregivers every day. One thing that has been really interesting about this is, beyond, and I know Molly's going to talk a little bit about some of the VA programs, our fellowship program is really broadly open to caregivers serving veterans of any era, pre or post 9/11, visible or invisible wounds of war, and also, spouses, parents, close friends, siblings, children, a really wide sort of definition of how you can apply to be fellows. And so this is something where, as our fellowship application is open, we would love to collaborate with MOAA and with your partners to really get the word out, because we seek to make our fellowship program as strong and as representative of this population as possible. As a part of the 2-year fellowship, they help us on a myriad of different activities. The first and foremost, I think, which is the one we get really excited about, is increased support on Capitol Hill. We've done Hill Days locally because they're so geographically dispersed. Fellows are able to work on different issues within their community. They also really play a key role with our staff and with our partners. Oftentimes, if partner organizations or nonprofits are trying to design a product or a program to help military families, our fellows are kind of a great sort of test group, if you will, to get some reactions and to better understand the needs so that programs and policies are really going to align with the challenges that they're facing. They also serve as Hidden Heroes representatives at different meetings, events, and interviews. A big part of our training is our training curriculum is focused on public speaking and interviewing. So oftentimes they become our field reps, whether it's with news outlets or with different organizations that are trying to better capture and represent the military family perspective. And then finally, they help us with our local events. And we'll be talking a little bit about Hidden Heroes cities in just a moment. But with being leaders in our community, our fellows really have an opportunity to create resource fairs or design different events locally for caregivers in their communities and in their neighborhoods. And so this slide just highlights a few of those examples of, different, whether it's summits, which I believe is coming up next week. It's a huge event or this weekend, excuse me. It's a huge event where we're really, really excited about it. I think, the foundation itself is headquartered in DC, but for us, really being able to leverage our fellows on these local community events has really helped us extend our reach. And I think for all of you on the phone, really provide real partnership opportunities to make sure that we're including all of these different organizations on the ground as we're thinking about some of these different resource fairs or respite retreats or different kinds of activities that are held locally. We also wanted to briefly talk about our Hidden Heroes caregiver community. For those that might not want to necessarily apply for a 2-year fellowship, we encourage everyone to apply but to join our Hidden Heroes caregiver community. This is a Facebook group which has really become a great platform for military caregivers to come together to talk about different issues, to comment and fill out surveys when those things come up. It's really been a great platform, I know, for us at the foundation to quickly understand or try to learn a little bit about different challenges that are going on. So it's really become a really great two-way street of not only disseminating messages out, but really learning a lot from our caregivers themselves. And I think the platform itself has really created a sense of community for a lot of the members. So it's been great to sort of see people from different parts of the country connect, sort of talk through different issues they're facing, offer advice. It's really been a really strong part of what we do, and we're excited to see where that will grow. I wanted to briefly talk about our Hidden Heroes Cities and Counties initiative. We got this started in 2016, and it's been a really great opportunity to really think about local grassroots activities and policies and programs that might better support caregivers in their community. Since launching in 2016, we have almost 150 cities, towns, and counties that have signed on to the Foundation's Hidden Heroes Cities programs. And as a part of this sign-on, not only is it just passing a resolution, but it's really trying to find programs that will better identify military and veteran caregivers in communities, as well as increasing access to different programs and resources available to them, as well as awareness about challenges that they might be facing. We have a full listing available, and this is an area that, in 2020, we're really seeking to grow and to expand. And so I wanted to just briefly talk through what some of the different, goals of the program are, whether it's identifying caregivers in their community, educating community leaders or employers or businesses on the needs of local caregivers, but then really connecting caregivers themselves with local resources and with each other within each of these communities. So if this is something that you're interested in learning about, seeing if it's in your area, definitely encourage you to reach out. I have my email address on that page, and let us know if you have any questions or are interested in learning more. Next, we wanted to chat a little bit about our campaign for inclusive care, and to do that, I'm going to hand it over to Colton Whitaker.
Hi there. Thank you, Rashi. My name is Colton Whitaker. I'm the program manager for the Campaign for Inclusive Care here at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. So thank you so much for having us on and chatting a little bit more about this. So just to dive a little bit more into the Campaign for Inclusive Care, the Campaign for Inclusive Care is a strategic joint initiative of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and the Department of Veteran Affairs, with the key goal to shift culture within the VA to be fully inclusive of family caregivers so that veteran health outcomes are improved, caregiver experiences are better, and clinicians and staff are more supportive in their important work that they do. We know that through the healthcare journey, and I know many of you are familiar with this, the military and veteran caregiver experience map potentially, but we know through the healthcare journey that a very vulnerable point for a caregiver is that initial clinical visit with their service member. And herein along the whole healthcare journey, communication can be very difficult and challenging at times. And so really to combat this challenge and to shift this culture within the VA, The Campaign for Inclusive Care is here to provide the training and resources and the tools needed to better communicate and work more collaboratively with caregivers, so really to educate clinicians along the way. Inclusive care really is an approach to healthcare that embraces, engages, and empowers caregivers, clinicians, and veterans throughout the entire care journey as a whole team together. We know that inclusive care will increase the capacity and competency of the entire care team to deliver appropriate, effective, and high-value services. So just to kind of give you a little bit more information about the Campaign for Inclusive Care, we've taken 3 major steps thus far towards creating this culture of inclusive care at the VA. First and foremost is understanding the challenges, so being able to identify the challenges and opportunities that caregivers face, followed by organizing a response, and then lastly, I'll get to at the very end, launching of the academy and the resources there. So understanding the challenges and opportunities, we have been working with a group of researchers from Duke and the UT Health San Antonio, and they've assessed current caregiver-clinician interactions within the VA by conducting clinician interviews and literature reviews on the concepts of inclusive care. So these models have really kind of helped us identify what it means to be inclusive in the VA. Followed by that, in organizing response. So in its pilot phase, as you can see on the screen, we are piloting this program with the VA in VISNs 10, 17, and 20, and to really dive a little bit deeper into this idea of the practice of inclusive care. Clinicians from each of these VISNs have been a part of our solutions team, which has really helped us to identify ways to integrate and promote inclusive care practices into their own work to really make sure the caregiver experience is better on both the clinician and caregiver side. And then you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And then lastly, the piece that I was mentioning at the beginning was the launch of the Academy for Inclusive Care. So coming early next year, so in January, we'll be launching the Academy for Inclusive Care. This is a set of online training modules that will be made available through the VA EES system, so the employment system, to really train clinicians on how to fully embrace caregivers into their practice. And really how to help identify caregivers as well as the journey map that I mentioned at the beginning. So this will be launching in early next year, and folks, it will be publicly available, and so folks on the call, as well as not just clinicians, general public, everyone can really go on and take these courses through the Academy for Inclusive Care to further embrace this idea of inclusivity. You can go to the next slide. And then, next slide there as well. Perfect. So the last thing I want to mention, just kind of in this larger realm of the campaign, one of the key pieces to this is our acronym CARE. So really very straightforward. What does it mean to practice inclusive care? And that's strictly the acronym CARE. So I did just want to leave you all with this when talking about the campaign. So C as in consider, clinicians need to consider who else needs to be present in the room. Clinicians need to acknowledge, they need to recognize that caregivers have taken on extra work and how that'll impact their wellness. R, which is review role. So determine the responsibilities that caregivers are comfortable with. Clinicians should ask certain questions like what tasks are easy for you to perform? Are there any other duties that can help here? And then the last piece of the acronym is CARE, is E, is encourage. So clinicians should really find out any barriers that exist, ask specific questions of how can I help with your at-home responsibilities for your veteran, and so forth. So this is one last piece that I wanted to leave you with to kind of help with kind of identifying practicing inclusive care and what it specifically means. It's more than just inviting caregivers into the room. Clinicians should be doing a lot more to incorporate into their practice. So with that, I am happy to answer more questions at the end on this subject, but feel free to go to campaignforinclusivecare.org to find out a little bit more information about this great work. And then, as I mentioned, the Academy will launch in January of 2020, which we're very excited about, and we'll make sure to circulate that information as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Colton. Hi, everyone. This is Molly Ramsey. I am the programs coordinator here at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. But within my role, I specifically handle our policy and advocacy efforts. And so just wanted to kind of give an overview of what is happening within the VA I know a lot of us are focused on Mission Act. And so what is the VA Mission Act, and what does it mean? How does it impact our caregivers? And so the VA Mission Act was signed into law in June 2018. And I won't read the slide directly to you, but it is a huge, huge, huge cultural overhaul. It's been one of the biggest VA sweeping bills that has been passed in the VA's history, really. And so you will hear about Mission Act when it comes to community care, the caregiver support program, and the IT system is a huge part of it as well. And so it is providing $5.2 billion in mandatory funding to extend the current Veterans Choice Program, which we are now referring to as community care, and then setting deadlines for prompt payments to community providers, which we all know has been a huge challenge, and that's why it's been hard for veterans to go outside of the VA healthcare system to get the care that they need. A lot of providers have not wanted to work with the VA because they have experienced severe delay in payment. But the biggest part that is huge for the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and caregivers is that it is expanding the current program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers to pre-9/11. Right now, how the program is established is it was established originally in 2011, and it's only for post-9/11 caregivers who have a service-connected injury or wound. And part of the Mission Act is to expand it to the pre-9/11s. And so if we want to go to the next slide, there is a short timeline or a small timeline here of what we are expecting within the Mission Act. It was signed into law in June of 2018, and within this overhaul and expansion, part of the support that is needed within the caregiver support program is to upgrade the IT system. And so what they have been doing is working on finding a platform that works best and can be customized to the program's needs. And so there have been multiple missed IT deadlines, sadly, but we're hopeful that they are now on the right track, and they're using a platform and starting to put files and records into it surely but slowly, I suppose you can say. And the new updated timeline for the expansion is going to be June 2020. So that is 2 years after the initial act was signed into law, but we and other advocates in the VA have expressed saying they want to get this right. They want to get it right quickly, but they also don't want to speed it along where they have to retract any promises that they've made. And so once the caregiver IT support or the system is certified by Congress, it will open up the caregiver support program to any veteran and their caregiver who qualifies that served on or before May 7th of 1975. And so that will allow for people to put in applications, and you will still have to go through the same vetting process and the new regulations. And then 2 years after that, whenever that exact certification happens and the application's open, it will then expand to anyone who served from May 8th, 1975 to September 11th, 2001. And so it will be a slow transition, but part of their reasoning behind this was they've known that there are veterans and caregivers who've been doing this for a very long time that have not had any support, and so they anyone who's done it the longest, they want to get support to as quickly as possible. And then also add support to anyone who served between 1975 and 2001. While the program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers may not be open to everyone immediately, there is another part of the caregiver support program at the VA, and it's for general caregivers. While there is no stipends assigned to it or the insurance through CHAMP VA, there are still support services that you can access. So I highly recommend reaching out and seeing what you all may have access to at your local VA. So we can go to the next slide. This I just wanted to provide. This is a press release from the VA that is saying that they would miss the October 1, 2019 deadline and go to the June 2020 deadline that they've now set. Like we've said, a lot of VSOs, MOAA included, we have all been very involved with the VA and expressing our concerns, but we are hopeful that they're getting this right now. I know it's not as soon as everyone had hoped, and it's definitely not as soon as we had hoped, but like I said, rather get it right than wrong. So that is kind of the VA Mission Act. So we can go to the next slide. And part of how we do our advocacy is through what we call the Federal Advisory Committee on Veterans, Families, Caregivers, and Survivors. That is a huge arm for us to do our advocacy and a lot of other VSOs in this space. And Senator Elizabeth Dole chairs this Federal Advisory Committee, and it allows for the committee to give sets of recommendations to the Secretary that directly impact these three sets of populations, whether you're a caregiver or family member or a survivor. We want to hear from you of what your challenges are so we can potentially put forward a recommendation that could hopefully make your caregiving journey easier and your veteran's life a little bit easier. And so luckily, we are very happy to report that in the last year, this committee has submitted 12 recommendations that have all been accepted by the Secretary of the VA. Sometimes that always doesn't happen. Sometimes there's one recommendation that the VA and the Secretary say that they're not able to do or perform to the expectations of the committee. But luckily, they have signed on and accepted all 12 sets. And so those are currently being implemented as we speak, whether it's through the Mission Act implementation and oversight process, or it's through different other programming within the VA. So we can go to the next slide. So one thing that MOAA definitely wanted us to talk about is what are some caregiver resources out there. Caregiving journey, we've all heard, you've seen one VA, you've only seen one VA. When you've heard one caregiver story, you've only heard one caregiver story. None of you all have the same day-to-days, and we hear that day in and day out from our fellows, from HHCC members and other caregivers that reach out to us. So we wanted to provide some resources that you may be able to turn to. So some of them, all three are linked here, so MOAA, if you don't mind also sharing these links, that would be phenomenal. The Military Caregiving Guide, we call it the Prepare to Care Guide. We created this in partnership with AARP, and really it's for those who are in the early stages of their caregiving journey, although everyone can still find some beneficial information and resources within that guide. The next we have our Hidden Heroes Resource Directory. That is housed through the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and we vet organizations that apply to be a part of this resource directory to ensure that they are truly going to serve caregivers and their families to our standards, and making sure that it's not just a scam or trying to get your data or information. We want to know that they are providing services directly to these caregivers to make your caregiving journey a little bit easier. And then next we have our MOAA Tips for Lifelong Caregiving. We refer to this almost daily when talking to other family caregiver or other caregivers. And we did this in partnership with MOAA. It's a great guide that I know MOAA also refers to when talking to caregivers. And really it's just another great guide that no matter where you are in your journey, whether you've been doing it for 2 months or 20 years, you can really refer to this and find and learn some new things that you may not have given any thought to previously. The next is our Department of Defense Caregiving Resource Directory. So this was just released not too long ago. So DoD releases a new caregiving directory every single year, and they also put organizations through a vetting process, a very stringent vetting process, where they release this guide and say, hey, no matter, again, whatever you're going through, please try and find some resources here. You can filter, and depending on where you are, your situation, anything like that, you can refer back to that. So that is all we had from our end, I believe. So Rashi, I'll turn it back over to you for anything else.
Yeah, I think that was the end of our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions. I know we covered a lot, and it's hard on these webinars because you're not always, I know questions come up, but we're happy to answer any questions you all might have.
And this is Brian Anderson from MOAA. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise on the impactful programs available to military caregivers. This is the portion in the program where we are opening it up to questions from our participants. We've already gotten a couple, but I encourage others to please submit your questions via the chat function, and we'll start answering them in the order that we kind of get them here. So the first one over to our Elizabeth Dole Foundation team is, unfortunately, my 95-year-old father-in-law, a retired Master Chief Petty Officer, is about to enter hospice. Death is likely imminent. What can I do at this point to be sure he receives proper burial honors? And what else do I need to do when he passes? And starting from the MOAA perspective, we have out there some publications from MOAA that can help, which is your guide to military burials and benefits. I would encourage you to go out to the MOAA website and look at that. But I would also like to open it up to our Elizabeth Dole Foundation team to tackle that question.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that caregivers always have kind of in the back of the mind, especially as your veteran is aging. Along with referring to MOAA's great knowledge and resources, the VA's memorial and survivors offices have great resources that are made public. You can just do a quick Google search. They have different resource guides that are out there, and whenever the imminent time does come, you can always reach out to and I know MOAA also partners with TAPS. It's a great organization that can really provide that one-on-one emotional support and kind of guide you through it. It is difficult to try and collect your thoughts and emotions and do a Google search when something like that happens, but having someone there that can also walk you through that is extremely helpful. But the memorial services at the VA, that is part of the thing that falls under the Federal Advisory Committee, and they're really working hard to kind of to make it more robust and more supportive to the families as they're going through that those challenging times.
And this is Rashi. One of the things about our Hidden Heroes caregiver community within the Facebook platform is we've collected a lot of those kinds of resources on a resource page. And so, if that's something that you end up deciding to join, I know that we try to have all those things readily available, because when those things happen, trying to search for it can feel quite overwhelming. So I know that that's always a topic that comes up, in different stages for folks.
Thank you for sharing those insights. The next question we got from our participants is, I am a veteran receiving a VA claim, a widower, and I am the primary caregiver for my adult daughter with cerebral palsy and can find no assistance in dealing with my role as a caregiver. Any guidance would be appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I would ask probably if you can definitely reach out to us for that, a little bit more of a specific question. Depending on the scenario, we would have some follow-up questions to get some more information. That way we can give more advice and also resources. So I know you all are seeing right now our contact, and really any three of us, we will be able to kind of tackle that as a team. So if you don't mind reaching out, that would be great.
So if I'm not electronically plugged in as a new caregiver, how do I then access resources, and how do I find out what those resources are?
Yeah, so that is one of the challenges that we do face. There are lots of printed materials. You can always go to your local VA and see what their caregiver support programs also have. Even if you just do a quick Google search of hiddenheroes.org or MOAA's website, usually just kind of tinkering around and playing around on the website, that's usually how I land on a lot of the information and knowledge that I have, is just poking around some websites. But even if that seems a little overwhelming, you can always ask for printed materials from your local VA, or even if you are able to email, again, the contacts that we have on that form, we're able to send some guides to you in a hard copy form that may be helpful to you as well.
Yeah, one thing that we always really stress whenever we're doing these kinds of calls or events, it's if you are able to either send us a note or get in touch with us, we can register you on our Hidden Heroes site, and that provides a really great touch point along with your mailing address. We want to make it as easy as possible. We recognize that a lot of people like sort of all the online platforms, but we try to make all of our materials available to folks in a variety of different ways. So always feel free to either give the foundation a phone call or send us a note, and we'll be sure to get you what you need.
Thank you. You also discussed during the presentation the VA Mission Act of 2018 and now how it's open to pre-9/11 in all eras. What are some things that people can help the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and also here at MOAA to make sure that we're helping on the outreach effort to get that word out and information that it is open to a much larger population now?
Yeah, so great question. So it will be open. It's not quite there yet. We're expecting, according to VA and some experts there, they said June 2020 is when they are hopefully going to be able to accept new applications for the pre-9/11 era. And again, it's between those dates of anyone who served on or before May 7th of 1975. But really, just call your congressman. I know that may sound very cliche for some Washington folks to say, but really expressing your concerns about the delay, especially if you are a pre-9/11 caregiver who could really benefit from these services and support, then letting them know, expressing your concerns about the delay, calling for oversight of the program, and really just learning more from your local caregivers too, building that caregiver network and seeing what you may be able to do, approaching your local VAMC, your medical center. They may want to hear directly from you of what you may be facing within your local community, because every VA medical center, they approach the program a little bit differently, but hearing from you may be eye-opening for them and say, oh, wow, this is something that is needed within our community. And you may be able to be that spark that really inspires them, that may help not only yourself but other caregivers who come through the system.
Yeah, and I think this has been something that's been really powerful and effective with our Hill Days across our fellows, because I think a lot of times elected officials are hearing from veteran communities, but that caregiver angle isn't always something that's front of mind. And so to Molly's point, I think connecting with your local VA and connecting with those folks are really important, because as she outlined, we have some really, really critical deadlines ahead of us. I think once that's open, I think there's going to be all sorts of ways to partner on getting the word out on outreach. But until we know that process is open and is working, and all the all the things have been tested out. I think kind of holding everyone's feet to the fire to make sure that those products are available in a timely fashion is going to be one of our number one priorities for 2020.
So you talked earlier about the Elizabeth Dole Caregivers Fellows Program. How does one get involved and or apply for the Fellows Program?
Yeah, so if you are specifically interested in learning more, you can definitely contact any three of us. I will say that the applications are closed at the moment. We just finished our application cycle. But if you are super interested and would still like to apply, reach out to us. We would definitely be willing to talk to you, learn more about your story, and see if the Fellows program would be beneficial to you. That is something that's huge for us. It's not only a huge service to the foundation because we're able to get in that local community, but we want to make sure it's beneficial to those who are involved. So please reach out to us if you're interested, because we would definitely be willing to learn more about you and open that application. And so just to kind of recap, or to go over the application process, so there is a online application, and then there is also a video interview or phone call that our Fellows Programs Manager conducts. And she is a caregiver herself and knows the lingo, knows how to talk to caregivers, and really is understanding. So that is kind of how one can be involved with our Fellows program.
Thank you for sharing that on the Fellows Program. We also have two on the line, AARP, and they just did a veteran caregiver workshop, and they said it was a real challenge for them to reach providers for their resource and presentation portion of the workshop. And they're wondering, and again, for those that are working in the VA, how can they get more support on this for next year and future events? And then also, too, is there some strategies that they can use to also expedite the approval process?
Are you able to let us know if those VA hosted caregiver workshops?
I believe so. I can't quite get it all out of the question, but it said for the VA here to where they were at.
I think what I would ask is for them to reach out to one of us listed on the slide, because I think it's always really hard, because I know each VA has a number of different programs that are ongoing, but I think on that one it might be helpful for us to learn a little bit more about the specific workshop and what they're trying to approve, so that we can lend our assistance if there's a way that we can help. We'd love to support, but I think it's a little hard to understand without the details.
Yeah, they came on and with an additional chat and said, yes, it was in partnership with the VA, and I can certainly understand and sympathize with that, too. From our career transition lens, we go out to numerous bases and installations, and we have similar challenges sometimes with DOD as far as getting base access, and then even when we do get base access, then being able to get participants to come because of, similar to this, the approval process. And so I do know that it can always be a challenge on some of these programs, not only to get access, but then once you do get access, to actually get participation.
Well, and one of the things that I think we're really excited about with our campaign for inclusive care is, Colton mentioned briefly the 3 pilot sites that we'll be doing in 2020, but the hope is to really expand that throughout the entire VA over the next couple of years. And so I think that depending on how the pilots go and as we implement that more broadly, that's going to be an area where we're really going to need to work with partners on the ground. And so what might be, depending on where the location is, of the individual, that might be an area where we could collaborate with them on some of these campaign for inclusive care training events and things like that. And I think our hope is that will be a nice way to be able to piggyback with local folks on the ground to really bring more attention to caregiver needs with VA staff, with VA leadership locally at each of those medical centers.
Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and bring this webinar to a conclusion. I'd like to apologize. I know there was some technical issues that people identified with being able to see the slides, and then there was some technical issues too with some people with the audio. We just recently transitioned to a new platform for our webinars, so we appreciate everybody hanging in there. Once again, if you did have any challenges, it was recorded and archived, and we'll be sending out a link to everybody. So if you feel like you may have missed certain portions or the audio wasn't completely clear, you should be able to get that. I would also encourage everyone to, at the end of this, there is a survey, help us to improve our future presentations by giving us some good feedback on that end as well too. And we also ask for what you would like to see for future topics. And with that, I'd really like to thank our Elizabeth Dole Foundation friends, not only for the webinar today, but also the great partnership, but then also too, everything that you're doing to support the military and veteran community, and we cannot thank you enough. So with that, we're going to say thank you. We appreciate each of you joining us today. You can contact Military Officers Association America at transition at MOAA.org, and we look forward to assisting you with your future career and life decisions. Have a great day, and never stop serving.